Let's talk about iteration loops. Iteration loops are very easy ways to actually go through our arrays in an organized way. In this part of the page here, in the iteration loops file, you can see that we're using some different syntax here. A function called reset. I'll explain that in a little bit. But what it does basically, it has an internal pointer reset to the beginning of the array. So if we're looking at manipulating the array from this point of view, we might be pointing to this element. I'll show you why and how. But reset will bring you back to the beginning. So just keep that in mind. And then when we deal with the while loop to go through each part of this array, we're going to use the list function, and we return the key and the value. You'll see this in different forms, but if you want the key and the value, you put that as a comma separated parameters for this particular function here that we're going to be working with. And it's a little bit strange looking. So this list, which is going to bring back the key and the value, is equal to each of the array values. And that's just a strange syntax that allows us to now, on any line within this while loop, grab the key and the value. Now, we echo key, which is actually the key, the actual element there. And then we actually use that key to get to the value in the array. We could easily pass $val here because it is the same thing as this. So we don't even need the value. We can just use the key. And if you look at the outcome, you see that this is going to loop through and go from 0 to 8 and then grab the values and output them right next to each other. If we just substitute this in here, it will have the same effect because the value is the actual value of that particular element, as you can see. And that is specified here in that first array. That's one way to do it. You might want to take a note of the syntax and get to know it, but you will see it throughout this training in different sections. Now below we have a second way to do this, and this is more requiring the reset. I use it usually at the beginning of a while loop that's going to traverse or go through that list. I do that because you never know when you're actually going to be using this function, current or next, or functions that really deal with moving through the array, like with an invisible pointer to a value. So when we go to current here, we're actually moving the array or moving to another element in that array. Current is going to bring back the current value. If we say array here, that's going to bring the current element that's being pointed to. And when we reset, like I said, we're going to be reset to the beginning. You don't have to do that in the beginning, but it's safe to do that. It's always going to point to the beginning in the beginning. And then next is going to go to the next element and grab the value. Return the value from that function. We'll look at functions in another section, but for the most part, that's how it works. A function, we pass the array as the parameter, and then we return a value, and this is going to be stored here. And we do it again to the next element, so you can see that this is going to just make that pointer go to the next one, and the next, as we use that next keyword. And then we can use the key function to bring back the key, the current key that you're at. So current brings back the value, key brings back the key, and that's just how you do that. And you can traverse through that very easily. And you can see that using the documentation if you want more information on working with that, and that's going to be output here at the bottom. But there are many, many great ways to work with arrays, and we're going to see a lot of different things in this section. You can even see that we can reset that back as we do here, and that's going to put us back into the first slot again, and we grab the key for that first element there, the first key in the list, and that's what's returned, 0, because that is the first key in that list. And we can also go to the end of the array. So many things you can do. You want to look up arrays on the php.net documentation for more information.